Hi, and welcome to Recharge Yourself YT. Are you an established genius is so different from each other? Today we will go through very briefly the common aspects of geniuses. But before we start, what sets a genius aside from a normal hard worker? Are there any people today that you consider as geniuses? Let me know in the comments below. A lot of people have misconceptions about why geniuses are successful. They believe that from a very young age they set themselves aside and met with recognition and glory through extraordinary ideas throughout their lives. While they did have many extraordinary ideas and extraordinary work ethics, quite a lot of them did not receive their genius tag until after their deaths. Van Gogh is a famous example. He was called a madman and was commercially unsuccessful during his lifetime until he eventually committed suicide. From the book, Daily Rituals, How Artists Work, examines the good work habits of over 150 of the greatest writers, artists, and scientists. What does nearly every genius have in common? Those interested in the 10,000-hour theory of deliberate practice won't be surprised. The vast majority of them were complete and unapologetic workaholics. From the books, Daily Rituals, How Artists Work. William Faulkner, an American writer and Nobel Prize laureate. During his most fertile years, from the late 1920s through the early 40s, Faulkner worked at an astonishing pace, often completing 3,000 words a day and occasionally twice that amount. He once wrote to his mother that he had managed 10,000 words in one day, working between 10 a.m. and midnight, a personal record. "I write when the spirit moves me," Faulkner said, "and the spirit moves me every day." Maya Angelou, an American poet, memoirist, civil rights activist, and author of I Know Why Caged Bird Sings. Sometimes the intensity of the work brings on strange physical reactions. Her back goes out, her knees swell, and her eyelids once swelled completely shut. Still, she enjoys pushing herself to the limits of her ability. "I have always got to be the best," she has said. "I'm absolutely compulsive, I admit it. I don't see that's a negative." H.L. Mencken, an American journalist, essayist, satirist, cultural critic, and scholar of American English. His compulsiveness meant that he was astonishingly productive throughout his life, and yet, at age 64, he could nevertheless write, looking back over a lifetime of hard work. "My only regret is that I didn't work even harder." Musician Glenn Gould, a Canadian classical pianist, was one of the best-known and most celebrated pianists of the 20th century, and was renowned as an interpreter of the keyboard works of Johann Sebastian Bach. From the time he retired from public performances in 1961 when he was 31 years old, Gould devoted himself completely to his work, spending the vast majority of his time thinking about music at home or recording music in the studio. He had no hobbies and only a few close friends and collaborators, with whom he communicated mostly by telephone. "I don't think that my lifestyle is like most other people's and I'm rather glad for that," Gould told an interviewer in 1980. "The two things, lifestyle and work, have become one. Now if that's eccentricity, then I'm eccentric." Alexander Graham Bell, a Scottish-born inventor, scientist, and engineer who is credited with inventing and patenting the first practical telephone. As a young man, Bell tended to work around the clock, allowing himself only 3 or 4 hours of sleep a night. When in the throes of a new idea, he pleaded with his wife to let him be free of family obligations. Sometimes, in these states, he would work for up to 22 hours straight without sleep. Van Gogh, a Dutch post-impressionist painter who posthumously became one of the most famous and influential figures in the history of Western art. "Today again from 7 o'clock in the morning till 6 in the evening I worked without stirring except to take some food a step or two away," Van Gogh wrote in an 1888 letter to his brother, Theo, adding, "I have no thought of fatigue, I shall do another picture this very night, and I shall bring it off." Artist Chuck Close, an American painter, artist, and photographer. He makes massive-scale photorealist portraits. "Inspiration is for amateurs," Close says. "The rest of us just show up and get to work." What else did many have in common? There were more morning people than night owls. Most had a clear routine. The majority woke early, worked until midday, took a break for a few hours then resumed work until dinner. Most seemed to use the evening hours for relaxation and socializing. Going for walks was another pattern. Tchaikovsky, Nathaniel Hawthorne, Georgia O'Keeffe, and many others had long walks as part of their daily routine. Not all habits were healthy. They also took copious amounts of drugs, alcohol, and smoking. Balzac regularly drank over 50 cups of coffee during a work session. Freud smoked as many as 20 cigars a day for decades, there was no shortage of alcoholics, and how common the use of amphetamines was. JeanPaul Sartre, French philosopher, playwright, novelist, screenwriter, political activist, biographer and literary critic. From the book Daily Rituals, How Artists Work. He turned to chlorodrain, a mix of amphetamine and aspirin then fashionable among Parisian students, intellectuals, and artists, and legal in France until 1971, when it was declared toxic and taken off the market. The prescribed dose was 1 or 2 tablets in the morning and at noon. Sartre took 20 a day. His diet over a period of 24 hours included 2 packs of cigarettes and several pipes stuffed with black tobacco, more than a quart of alcohol, wine, beer, vodka, whiskey, and so on, 200 milligrams of amphetamines, 15 grams of aspirin, several grams of barbiturates, plus coffee, tea, rich meals. Paul Erdos, a renowned Hungarian mathematician. He was one of the most prolific mathematicians and producers of mathematical conjectures of the 20th century. From the book Daily Rituals, How Artists Work. Erdos owed his phenomenal stamina to amphetamines. He took 10 to 20 milligrams of benzedrine or Ritalin daily. Worried about his drug use, a friend once bet Erdos that he wouldn't be able to give up amphetamines for a month. Erdos took the bet and succeeded in going cold turkey for 30 days. When he came to collect his money, he told his friend, "You've shown me I'm not an addict. But I didn't get any work done. I'd get up in the morning and stare at a blank piece of paper. I'd have no ideas, just like an ordinary person. You've set mathematics back a month." After the bet, Erdos promptly resumed his amphetamine habit, which he supplemented with shots of strong espresso and caffeine tablets. A mathematician, he liked to say, is a machine for turning coffee into theorems. As the Erdos anecdote illustrates, many of the drugs, especially the amphetamines, were not used for pleasure, but as a way to increase productivity and output. Overall, the message is clear. Work, work, work. To be a genius at your craft, it's all about the hours and dedication. If you want to see more content like this, please do not forget to subscribe and like. See you next time.